But what are some of the things that you can point out that, people can readily identify with, like, hey, this is clearly a sign that this is going on?
There are like you said, there are so many. I mean, we can look at the Armageddon type of scenarios that we see playing out on the planet right now. And there are multiple of them. There is such a threat from what we could call Big Brother. There is such a threat from an overseeing, overarching, overreaching eye. Something that transcends all governments. We have an awareness that there is something beyond that wants to ensnare humanity. Or maybe it's by digital currency. Maybe it's by some kind of injectable. We have all of these things in our awareness. We try to ignore them because it's very uncomfortable to look at, but there is that looming threat. That looming threat is the dissolving of the false matrix. That's what we're seeing. Why are none of those plans working out the way that they were predicted to, the way that the planners, the architects of that plan wanted them to? Because I promise you this, they wanted humanity to be a lot more compliant than humanity ever was. So the reason that none of those things will work out or can work out the way that they're planned is because of our consciousness, because we keep doing this really inconvenient thing, at least from the perspective of the archons, it's very inconvenient, and that is evolving. The more our consciousness shifts, the more the best laid plans of these very high minds, and I say high, not as in highly evolved, but as in incredibly intelligent, they laid out these plans, which was a snare for us to fall into in order for us to be re-trapped, resubmitted back into another false matrix program. That was their plan. We're not going along with their plan. We keep thwarting it, and we don't even know how. We, the light workers, I love this about us. We're operating blind. Does any one of us have a game plan? Does any one of us have a roadmap that says, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is where to next? No, none of us do. Because the plan isn't here seeded into our logical consciousness, because then it can be read. The plan must be a moment by moment evolution. That's what it is. That's why it's quantum. That's why it's unpredictable. The only thing that we have is a sense of I'm evolving, I'm growing, I'm elevating higher, and we're doing that every single day. Every single day. All of nature is doing this with us. We're not alone. And that's another thing that we're seeing. If you say to me, what are the hallmarks that this is taking place? Okay, we can look at the doomsday scenario stuff. We can also look at the climate change stuff, because that's all part of it. But a bigger thing for me that's really interesting here is how nature is beginning to work with humanity. The energy that is coming in right now is what I'm describing to you. So the hallmark of what we're seeing, we can look at all the doomsday stuff, but that's just a collapsing timeline. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is the level of support that could never, ever have been on planet before that is on planet now. That's all I need to see. To know, to feel, to experience the higher timeline in the process of unfolding. Because as one is dissolving, the other is emerging or unfurling.
When you're referring to said beings, are they energetically present and not visible to the naked eye, or are they existing in visible parts of the band of because we're sharing the earth, it seems, with, can you explain that a little bit further, please, for those that are tuning in?
When we move into a fifth dimensional physical vehicle, our fifth dimensional eyes get switched on then. So when the body shifts from 3D to 5D, the eyes, being part of the body, will then be able to perceive 5D beings. We can't perceive them right now. At least not in full, but we can feel them. We can feel them. And they can lend presence, their presence to us, to allow us to draw from pure love, to draw from pure creative God source potentiality, and bring that into our reality. We don't realize this, but we have not had access to these energies. We've been starved of these energies. And we've not realized the extent of the quarantine that we've been in the false matrix. The false matrix was very cut off from these frequencies. So we have been without the support that we've needed. And that, by the way, is one of the reasons why we as a human species have felt so disconnected, so lonely, so isolated. Because as a planetary whole, we were so lonely, disconnected, and isolated. And that's beginning to come back online again. So it appeases and alleviates the loneliness that we were stuck in when we were in the throes of the false matrix and quarantined from these high frequencies that are now on surface.
We've now entered a very powerful phase of shift of power, just the very beginning. And it's interesting that the equinox occurs within 24 hours of the solar eclipse, and that strengthens both of them. There's always a feeling of walking between worlds. And that feeling is even bigger this year because of all the things I've talked about with endings and beginnings and that other people are talking about. Endings and beginnings of small cycles, huge cycles, thousands of years cycles. And so this is another smaller cycle where that feeling of walking between two worlds is reinforced. Now that could be in your own personal life. You feel that, and I think this is going to be true for virtually everybody, that certain people or circumstances are falling away from your life, or that you're releasing them consciously and deliberately because you're aware that your frequency is shifting. And when our frequency shifts, there are relationships, situations which we have outgrown, and we move on. Our frequency forces us to move on. And nature abhors a vacuum, as we know. So once we have that sense of void or vacuum, new people come in, new circumstances come in to fill that void, to match your frequency, because everything always operates on a frequency match. You magnetize them in because your frequency is shifted. And also, of course, on top of that, we're toggling between 3D world and higher dimensions. Many of us are experiencing this. And we've kind of got a foot in both worlds in that sense too. So this isn't just the regular in-between worlds, it's bigger than that. Throwing up issues around your day-to-day activities, your routines, etc. And if you're making these changes, or even being forced to make these changes, how are you going to signal to the universe that you want something new and different? You do it by changing some habit, some part of your routine in your day-to-day schedule, because that's very much Virgo. So don't forget, this is like a super big new moon. It's only a partial solar eclipse, but it's actually very powerful for other reasons. It throws up issues of urgency or crisis around the symbolism of those signs. Now, I've said several times before that Virgo Pisces represents the health axis. Pisces and its ruler Neptune are linked to our immune system in general and the lymphatic system and the blood. Virgo is linked to a general sense of health, but also particularly the gut, the microbiome, and getting everything in the body working like clockwork, getting it working properly. So what I think we are very likely to see at this solar eclipse in Virgo is possible big, urgent crisis issues around health. I think that's very, very likely. Possibly the earth as well, because Virgo is an earth sign, of course, but I do think things are going to come up around our health, around blood, or around the immune system. So we'll wait and see what happens, but there could be some significant announcements round about the time. Remember that with eclipses, we feel them up to a month before, and we feel them up to 6 months afterwards as well. Now, 29 degrees of Virgo, it is about to tip into, the solar eclipses at the sun, moon are about to tip into the next sign of Libra, 0 of Libra. And as you may know, 0 degrees of the cardinal signs give or take 2 degrees either way. So that covers 28 of the mutables where this solar eclipse is to 2 degrees of the cardinals. Those are known as world axis or world points. And what that means is when you have planets there, whatever the issue is that's coming up at that time, it's thrown onto the global stage in a bigger way. It's on the public stage in a bigger way than it otherwise would be. You know, it isn't just a personal issue. It could well be a personal issue, but it's a big deal globally. The Federal Reserve, that has a sun at 0 of the cardinal degrees. So this solar eclipse is going to square that. And remember also Saturn-Neptune are going to, transiting Saturn-Neptune are going to square that as well. So this is forming a T-square, essentially, to the Federal Reserve chart. And that's a big deal for the status of the US dollar, etc. The euro, chart for the euro, has an ascendant of 29 degrees of Virgo. Exactly where this solar eclipse is going to land. The ascendant of a person or a country is around the identity of that country, the confidence, how it projects itself to the world. And for the euro, the midheaven is at 29 degrees of Gemini. So this solar eclipse is also squaring the midheaven of the status, the leadership, the government of that currency. And that is very significant as well. So I think that is profound, fundamental change in the leadership and governance of the EU. Now it's going to hover around there for about the next year. So it doesn't have to be right now in September, but it's hovering around there for about the next year. Transiting Uranus is conjunct the South Node. So the South Node is the sort of collective past for the people running the EU, and Uranus is going to bring a lot of potential truth and shock and awakening.
Yes, finally.
I think to the public stage too. So it's not being aspected by the solar eclipse, but it is being aspected by transiting Uranus and transiting Pluto. Mars is part of this. And so this is really putting a lot of focus on Mars at this point of the solar eclipse, 29 degrees of Libra, the crisis degree around Libra. Peace negotiations, diplomacy, etc. Will that work well? Will it not? There's a sense of destiny with yods and fingers of fate. That actually is exact on the 17th of the month. It is also, of course, this is energizing Homer. Homer is in a sign also that's linked to medicine. Scorpio. Scorpio tends to be linked to the diagnostic side of medicine. And because of the sting in the tail, it's linked to the injectable side of medicine too. I think it's very much related to stem cell medicine, because part of Homer's myth is regeneration. Remember turning herself from an old crone to a young maiden, birthing babies all over her body. She's got a very powerful aspect for symbolism to do with regeneration. Of course, that's what stem cells are about. With enough community and spiritual help, they overcame the autocratic ruler. They overcame, and that was the end of his rulership. So Homer is very linked to community, people coming together in collaboration as well. Very important part of Homer. So I've talked about Virgo Pisces being very related to health. And the fact that this solar eclipse is really very tightly opposing Saturn and Neptune. On the one hand, this is about a big reality check around issues of health. Let's get real. Let's see what the facts are. You know, Saturn almost on that anoretic degree with this sense of urgency. Saturn is going to be hovering around that anoretic degree really through particularly the first half of September, but she comes back to that point again early next year. You know, remember, we're not done yet with these outer planet retrogrades, moving back into their previous signs. So it's kind of, okay, what are the facts? What are the facts here? And also Sun, Moon, solar eclipse opposing Neptune. Can we be clear about the facts? You know, or what's true, what's not? For many people, there may be confusion. The Sun is exactly opposing Neptune, so 23rd, 24th of the month, but there is going to be confusion for some. So check in with your heart. Don't just keep being buffeted by whatever the latest news report says. Check into your own heart. Virgo is all about discrimination. And we have to be much more used to going inside for the truth rather than outside. We've had lifetimes of going outside for the truth, and we've given away our power in doing that. So we also here have Mars and Hermia. Well, we know Hermia has been square to Pluto for some time, will continue to be, but Mars is now square to Pluto. It becomes exactly square to Pluto as it's moved into Scorpio by then on the 24th of the month. And Scorpio again that's Mars's original sign of rulership. Remember, Mars is the original ruler for Scorpio, and there's real anger and passion here. Square to Pluto. This is about where does the power lie? Does it lie with the individual? Mars. Does it lie with the state? Pluto. So that reinforces all the revolutionary theme we've been talking about. This can be angry. Scorpio can be vengeful. A square is very tough. So I can see dynamic power struggles coming up at that time. And that part of this solar eclipse could prompt some changes in leadership too. I think the bigger meaning of this Saturn-Neptune conjunction is making real the dream. Making real the dream. Neptune actually remains right on zero of Aries, the first degree of the zodiac, the creator degree, until the 22nd of October. And then it comes back again January, February next year. And really get into this. You could not have a better opportunity in your life, because it's the creator degree, to imagine what you'd love to manifest, to imagine what you'd love to manifest, and then make it real, Saturn. And take realistic steps towards it as the old dissolves. Saturn, old structures in Pisces dissolve. But because of the Virgo emphasis as well, what practical steps day to day? How are you going to signal to the universe that you want something different in your life? To make real the dream that may have up to now been unthinkable. You know, do you want to move to a tropical island? Do you want to change your career in a very radical way? You know, do you want to change your whole social network? And what is most important with this is to go inwards. Meditate, do breath work, go inwards with all of this, not outwards. And really try and create a kind of physiological harmony with breath work, with candle gazing, with yoga, with Tai Chi, with whatever you're doing. Try and create this physiological harmony, because that creates coherence, heart coherence, and that ripples right through every cell in your body. It's incredibly positive for every cell in your body, for your health, and it also amplifies your heart toroidal field, and it lights you up. This is what lights you up. So coherence is a very big part of this, and you achieve that by breath work, particularly rhythmic breath work, yogic breath work, but also via being in nature, bare feet on the grass, yoga, etc.
Solar eclipse on September 21st. And this isn't just a sky event, it is a soul checkpoint, if you will. The full moon was an emotional purge. The solar eclipse is the energetic reset. Eclipses in astrology have always been viewed as portals, not just symbolically, but cosmically charged. And when a solar eclipse follows a lunar one, it creates this sacred echo. So like first we release and then we rebuild. Now the solar eclipse offers a moment of silence, a temporary dimming of ego and noise. It's a time for us to ask, what am I becoming now that I have let go? I personally will be doing self-care. I will be doing less and feeling more. Solar eclipses can leave you foggy and fatigued. Do not force clarity. This is one of those times when you rest and you let the silence speak before your decisions do. I will be protecting my energy. During an eclipse, the sun's light is blocked, so usual rhythms may feel off. You want to avoid energy draining conversations or distractions. Light a candle, take a salt bath, carry obsidian, tourmaline, smoky quartz, whatever protects you. And this is a time to reflect instead of manifest. Unlike new moons, solar eclipses are not ideal for manifesting. They are for pausing, observing, and recharging and realigning. Ask yourself what wants to be born from this darkness. Honor the unknown. In ancient traditions from Babylon to Mesopotamia, solar eclipses were times of reverence, a reminder that even the light must rest. Write, walk, meditate. Let the quiet be your teacher. This is definitely not a moment to rush forward. It's a moment to listen inward. Let the eclipse close what needs closing and prepare the ground for what is there to emerge. You're in the pause between inhale and exhale. And trust me, there is magic there too.
So this is happening 22nd of September, as I say. Now, a very busy chart and an awful lot to say about this too. So this always happens when the sun moves into zero of Libra, which it does universal time 1820. That's on the clock, it's 1920 UK time. British summertime. So instantly we can see that the sun is opposing Neptune and Saturn. Actually, this Libra equinox is acting as an activator for that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And this I see particularly once Saturn comes back to zero of Aries. Zero of Aries is that degree of pure potentiality. It's the very first degree of the zodiac, pure potential. So Libra, the Libra sun, zero of Libra, is saying, okay, what are you going to do with that pure potential? What are you going to do with it? And there's a lot of creativity in here because Pisces and Libra, I would actually say, are the two most creative signs. So there's a lot to play with here. And we also have 10 orbiting bodies in cardinal signs as well, I believe. I think 11, actually. So if we go around, cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. So if we go around, we've got Sun, Mercury, Moon, Maki Maki, Ixion, Kwawa. We've got Neptune, Selassie, Lilia, Akuna, Honua, and also Jupiter. I think that's 11 in total. And Chiron. So cardinality is about action, and this is going to be a very action-packed 3 months. I mean, and remember, I'm talking about 3 months here. I'm not just talking about the 22nd of September. The other lunations, as I say, will be added as layers on top of that. So what are we activating? What are we planning? What are we dreaming in, Neptune? What are we yearning for, Neptune? And, there are lots of people yearning for a very different life. What are we dreaming in? Are we going to be able to, or are we going to take a risk, Aries, step out sometime next year? I'd suggest a plan and dream, but just my sense is there's going to be an awful lot of change in these next 3 months. So in terms of a launch of a new life, a new plan, a new idea, a new project, a new passion, if it's a big move that you're planning, and I know many people are thinking of changing geography, then it might be better to wait until some of this turbulence is over and settles a little, because this is a 9-year. In numerology, it's a 9-year, and because 2 + 2 + 5 adds up to 9. In numerology, that's very much a year of ending. And boy, we're right in the midst of that at the moment. Next year, 2026, is a 1 year, and that's a whole new beginning. That isn't just in the numerology, it's the fact that all of the outer planets by the end of April will have moved into their new signs fully for the rest of their cycles. It's new energy, it's fresh energy, it's direct, it's not going back and forwards as we have with the planets this year. Endings, beginnings, endings, beginnings. It's much greater surge and momentum forward. So that would be a better year if you're planning something major. I'd humbly suggest, if it's something really big, any creative project, of course, you can start at any time. But just be aware there's going to be a lot happening in change in the next few months. Choices are more important than they have ever been. And I've said this before. Choice here, Gemini, because of the gravitas, the importance of the times we are in, we've gone way beyond the hamster wheel. And so be really wise and conscious in your choices. The other part of choice is focus. Where are you putting your focus? Remember, as Paul Levy said, your focus is your superpower. Your focus is what you are bringing into manifestation. Because in the quantum world, your focus energizes the quantum soup to start to bring manifestation into reality. And as I say, broadly, there are 2 broad collective timelines. One based on fear and one based on love. So if you're being caught up in the narrative about the awfulness of everything, and it is awful, you will magnetize to you more things to become fearful of. And I'm really giving a bit of tough love here. And I know it's hard. I know people are going through awful tragedies right now. I've got people all around me, close to me, and it's really heartrending. I'm not pretending that everything is rosy, but the more we energize that, the more it will step into our reality, because we'll be having conversations with people that feel the same. Yeah, ain't it awful? Isn't it scary? Yes, there's going to be more, war and death, and gosh, what's going to happen? They will be your conversations, your social network, what you look at on social media, etc. If you are focused on love, which is much more invisible, and joy and peace and compassion and community and coming together. It is more invisible by a mile, because the other timeline is so dramatic and in our faces. But if we're going to create something different and way better than we've ever known, we have to have the discipline to focus on love and joy and compassion and peace and gratitude. But we have to be aware that we all have a choice. We all have a choice. Nobody's forcing us onto either timeline. We have a choice. So I'm going to be even more vigorous in saying that than I have been before. So, we have I hardly know where to start with this, because there's so much here. So yes, we have this yearning for our dream, and are we actually really going to make real the dream for ourselves? Are we going to take that risk, particularly into the early months of next year? We have a T-square here between the Sun, Ixion, and Neptune, Saturn. Now, Ixion, you might remember, was the lawless brother of Pluto. But the other positive expression of Ixion is he just decides to abandon mainstream society and, almost with a knapsack on his back, go off to find joy in simplicity through his own pathway in life, joy in simplicity. And I know that speaks to many of us right now. I've talked about Nessus as a centaur and the symbolism there around, blood and deception and gaslighting and all kinds of things. Go back to previous videos because I don't want to go through all that again. But Nessus being conjunct the North Node is recognizing all of this kind of moral bankruptcy, let's call it, is a necessary part of where we are headed to as a collective in order to make that step into awakening. Hope that's making sense. So recognizing the moral bankruptcy that Ixion, in its negative expression, symbolizes, and Nessus, is a necessary part of our awakening, which is Uranus in this unique configuration, again, the big picture, trine to Pluto, and in sextiles to Neptune and Saturn. And I believe this is a completely unique astrological configuration, as again, talked about a great deal. So that is the T-square there. Another thing I want to, by the way, also, not only Nessus conjunct the North Node, but we have Orcus, dwarf planet, conjunct the South Node. And Orcus in myth was one of the lords of the underworld, Etruscan god of the underworld. And he's quite shamanic, actually, Orcus, and very much symbolizes the transmuting of dark into light, making people who have violated divine law or sacred law see the light. So transmuting the dark to the light, and Alan Clay talks beautifully about this. Nessus is about the buck stops here. So we have some very clear themes happening, feeding into that. We have 4 orbiting bodies here in Libra. Libra is one of the signs connected to the law. The other is Sagittarius. So very much legal issues could come up around this time, but it's also just about the need to find balance, to find harmony with nature. My goodness, how we've abandoned that, and how we yearn, so many of us yearn to get back to that equilibrium that we saw in Lemuria. Ancient Lemuria was a beautiful example of that. And Makemake, the dwarf planet, is linked to the creator god of the Rapa Nui people, linked to Easter Island. And you can read the history of Easter Island, that it was very much ravaged and pillaged by European sailors who brought in disease and rats and cut down all the trees, etc. And eventually, East Ireland was down to a tiny, tiny number. I think it was just a couple of hundred residents. It was tiny. But because of their understanding of natural cycles, and partly because the soil there contains a very unusual chemical called rapamycin, which helps regeneration, they managed to regenerate the soil, the food system, the ecosystem back to health. And so Maki is a very powerful symbol for regeneration and for new earth, as is Omaya, that I've talked a lot about. So remember, all these things I'm talking about are looking down the pipeline 3 months. So Libra is about really getting this sense of balance and harmony and coming back to a real love of the earth where everything operates in oneness and harmony. And I just feel this so deeply, and more people are being drawn to this kind of venture, whether it's regenerative farming or permaculture or whatever it is. Also, we have very positively a beautiful grand trine in air. And that is Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius, conjunct Uranus Sedna, and in a trine to the Sun here. Mercury is a little bit wide. But now, a grand trine in air, and air is about ideas, it's about our social systems as well. And so this is brilliant for the birth of new ideas, about all kinds of things, how society will operate, or how we will come together in community, Aquarius, how also in a greater understanding of our consciousness and our neural networks. That's very much, I think, not only Pluto in Aquarius, but also Uranus in Gemini as well. We're going to make huge discoveries about our consciousness and how our neural networks work. I also think it potentially could give us a great deal more galactic connection. That is the literal translation of Uranus in Gemini, galactic connection, galactic communication. So that is beautiful for birthing all kinds of new ideas. I think we're going to have a lot more discoveries of the deep seas and oceans we know so little about that can provide potentially new plant food, new medicines for us, all kinds of things, and also new forms of life at a deeper level. Is this going to teach us a lot more about the inner earth beings that we're starting to find out about as well, who are very advanced in their intelligence? It isn't just as I've said so often, it isn't just the out there, it's the in, deep down in oceans and within the earth. I think it's going to be a revolutionary period of discovery and new ideas and new inventions in so many ways. And also remember, the ruler of this Libra equinox is Venus, planet of love in an earth sign of Virgo. So this is greater love being birthed for our earth right now. And also Virgo, I always think of as connecting us back to ancient wisdom, shamanism, plant medicine,
yes,
essential oils, all that kind of thing, ancient forms of healing. And there's also a sense of purification with Virgo, a sense of purification, which I think is very beautiful.
At the same time, I can't catch my breath. I don't know where I am. If I ask you what's going on in your life, you'll say, I don't know yet. Something in you feels like everything is happening, that even when you're sleeping, you're not getting rest because energy is swirling, things are moving, your brain is busy, you're doing. But what are you actually doing? You don't really know. It's hard to put your finger on it because it's so much, but it's nothing. It's a paradox. We're living through a complete and utter paradox. So don't look for your life to make sense. I mean, we're trying to do that through this podcast, but hopefully we're not going to get stuck at the linear analytical level. But that's where a lot of people will be. And the bottom line is everything all at once. Yes, everything is happening. The splitting, the coming together, it's all taking place at the same time. And that is because we're experiencing this fourth dimensionally. And that's how 4D time behaves. 4D, 5D. So pretty much from the fourth dimensional point and beyond, time behaves differently. In the third dimension, time behaves very consecutively, very sequentially, one thing at a time. First the splitting, then the coming together, then the making whole, then the making peace. For example, that would be a process, and you could only take one step after the next. You can't jump from step 1 to step 5 in 3D. But the moment you hit 4D, which we really have, time becomes very non-linear. And that's why everything is happening all at once. It's because we have shifted into a higher dimensional experience. We're not yet 5D, but we are in consciousness able to access 5D. We're able in consciousness, so not in body. This is an important distinction, because I hear people say this from time to time. They say, oh, I'm 5D. No, you're not. No one is. But that doesn't mean you can't access 5D. You can. We all can. We live in a 3D body. Our timeline is a 4D timeline. So that means the energy that surrounds us, this is 4D. The body is 3D, but the consciousness can access 5D and beyond. So that's an overview of where we are right now. That's also why everything's happening all at once, because we're unplugged from only living in 3D. I mean, think about this. We were born 3D body, 3D timeline, 3D consciousness. We lived in one place. That's why everything was so predictable in time. We're not in that predictability of 3D now. 3D body, 4D timeline, 5D consciousness. We're all over the place. We're truly unplugged from that consecutive notion of how time used to work, the structure of time. It's very much degraded right now because we're in between dimensions. So even on your off days, I want everyone to remember this, even on your really difficult days, every step that you take and every breath that you take is taking you closer to ascension. Even when it feels like you're going in the opposite direction. This is also an important point. We cannot turn back. We lost that ability quite some time ago. There is no going back. There is only going forward. It's as if there's an invisible force pushing us through the timeline. So we're going to feel like we're being pressured into growing when we don't necessarily want to grow this fast. That's your soul. If I can give you a visual, imagine your soul behind you, pushing you and going, there is no going back. There is only going forward. There is no getting lost in any dark matrix. There is none of those as options anymore. There is only forward movement into the organic timeline. Yes, there will be those who choose the lower timeline, but you will not accidentally fall in there. You will not accidentally get lost. If your soul choice is, I am ascending, if your soul choice is, I am walking the higher timeline, then that is exactly what's taking place right now. There is no deviation from that, even when you feel forlorn, depressed, anxious, stuck. This is maybe that you're at a sticking point. Maybe you're at a point in your timeline where you're battling to take the next step, but you're definitely not going backwards. That's not an option for us anymore. A higher or a lower frequency. Those are the two options right now. But the question you asked me is why? What is driving this ascension, which is a cyclical event? It's God's calendar. And this cyclical event will happen because this is the best way that I can describe it to you is to say to you, God's voice has called this creation, which is the false matrix. God's voice has called this back into itself, as if to say, it's enough now. It's time now. It's time to dissolve this thing. So we're in the process of dissolving the false matrix. We're in the process of collapsing all of those parallels that were never meant to be as many as they were. They were as many parallels as they were because of the manipulation of the false matrix. In any given organic timeline, yes, you can have a few splinters, but not the thousands of timelines that we had. Those thousands of timelines were there because of the manipulation, the malevolent manipulation of the archonic influence of the false matrix. And that's where we go back into that first podcast that you and I did together, where I explained that in a little bit more detail. But that's the voice, that's the instruction that our timeline is obeying. It's the instruction of God, source, creator consciousness saying enough of the perversion and the distortion, because nothing can carry on forever which is not organic. We lived in a false matrix. In other words, it was inorganic. In other words, it wasn't of God's original creative design. It was hijacked out of the natural divine matrix. So now God's going, okay, you've had your playtime. You've had that time in the false matrix. It was a great experiment, but we're done. And that's why we on the surface also have that sense. We all have it where we go, I don't know why, but this is an important life. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm not coming back again. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm here for a very big reason, and it's frustrating because I don't know what it is. You don't need to know what it is. You only are recognizing something big is going down here. This is no ordinary life. This is not just another reincarnation. This is not just another day in the false matrix. Every day is another day of the collapse behind you. So it's like a demolition in slow motion, and you are living through it. And that demolition is not even happening only externally, it's happening internally too, because everything that happens out there is happening in here at the same time.
Don't forget that also Mars, it's also square to Pluto. So this can be a clash between individual power, Mars, and kind of state power. And again, that's back to the whole revolutionary theme. But it also brings in terrific willpower and focus. If you have if you have a hard aspect, but even with a trine or a sextile in your own birth chart between Mars and Pluto, it can give you laser focus, tremendous willpower. And so that's, again, that will really help our sense of focus and how to make our choices more widely. Now, so much to share here. The moon is conjunct Maki. So this is the people in global astrology. So the people are really very much wanting this sense of the earth to be reborn and regenerated. So this is also a T-square, another T-square, 10 degrees of the cardinals here, square to Quawa, another dwarf planet. And with Quawa, the important thing, I think Quawa is very linked to the principle of frequency, because the myth of Quawa, and Quawa is linked to the Tongva people who lived originally around the Los Angeles basin. This is about bringing ourselves out of chaos into joy. The recognition that we cannot create from chaos because we'll only get more chaos. The need to shift our frequency by coming together in community. Quawa is very related to community. And in song and dance, raise our frequency into joy and create from joy.